Welcome back to Trader UK for another 5-minute stocks video where I review companies that have been suggested to me by subscribers of the channel to see if I can find a place for them within my portfolio. Today's company was suggested to me by Zakir. Thank you for the suggestion. Keep them coming in down in the comments. Let's take a look. The company is Lake Resources. They're out of Australia. Their ticker symbol is LKE if you have access to the ASX in Australia. If not, you can find them as LLKKF on the OTC. These guys specialize in the extraction of high quality lithium. Lake Resources own the lease on a number of sites in Argentina in an area known as the Lithium Triangle, where 40% of the world's lithium is currently produced. Now, what's different about this company is the way that they actually extract the raw material from the ground. To understand the benefits of what they do, first of all, you need to know that the vast majority of extraction currently takes place via one of two techniques. The first of which is the hard rock technique, where the material is extracted from the ground in big open pits like this one on screen. Lots of that material ends up getting transported to China, where they process it at extreme temperatures to create the end product. Because the raw material is usually transported a long distance and then it's being treated at a high temperature, this tends to be a very carbon intensive process. The other extraction technique is by way of evaporation. This technique involves bringing a liquid known as a brine from below the surface where the deposits are, and they then leave it out in huge pools on the surface. The water evaporates in the sunlight and it leaves them with the salt that contains the lithium. This process relies on heat from the sunlight, so it's less carbon intensive, but it's very water intensive and also very land intensive, as the pools take up a lot of space on the surface. On top of this, the process takes months and months and sometimes years and years, so it leaves you with very little wiggle room in case you need to increase or decrease supply to meet fluctuating demand. The technique that Lake Resources want to use, as far as I can tell, is not a new technique or a new technology. Rather, it's a technique used in water treatment which has been adapted for this industry. The process involves taking the brine from beneath the surface and removing the water using ion exchange. That takes about 3 hours. Then 98 or 99% of the water is actually returned to the source. And there is no huge land requirement, just a processing plant and a hole in the ground to extract the brine. So this process seems to address most of the environmental issues that lithium extraction currently creates, which will only be exacerbated as demand increases. So let's take a look at the current share price as well as the recent performance. This one is trading at 32 cents Australian, and it's really been the last 4 or 5 weeks that it's really been taking off, primarily down to the expected increase in demand created under the Biden administration's green economy, plus wholesale lithium prices have recovered somewhat after a previous price drop on the back of falling demand in China, but they seem to be getting back to where they were. Market cap of the company just over 300 million Australian dollars. First of all, let's do the negatives. I have to say, it's not normally an industry that I tend to be that interested in. I'm never usually too keen on mining or exploration companies. I think even when they're up to scale, there's so much risk here when it comes to the environmental issues, the governance issues, political issues. Some people call this a mining technology company, but as far as I'm aware, the technology doesn't actually belong to them. Their value, Lake Resources, comes from the eventual extraction of the raw material. And the bottom line for this company, they're not extracting any lithium yet. This is still some way off actually. The definitive feasibility study is underway now and results should be ready at the end of the year or maybe the first quarter of 2022. Following that, there would need to be funding for the construction and they would need to complete the build. The absolute earliest we are likely to see lithium extraction is 2024, and of course there's a lot that can go wrong between now and then. Okay, and what about the positives? Well, demand, first of all. Demand for this product is going to be incredibly high in the coming years. Most think tanks and actually Lake Resources themselves say they just don't see how supply will be able to keep up with demand. And I would agree with that. Recently, there's actually been a massive uptick in people using second-hand car websites, and that was put down to the pandemic and how people don't want to use public transport. But part of that is also going to be down to the planned phasing out of combustion engines around the world. People won't want to spend large amounts of money on a car that will pretty much be obsolete in the next decade. So I think the transition to EVs will actually happen quicker than they're expecting. I also like the disruptive technology they are using, which comes from Lilac Solutions, their technology partner. Lilac Solutions are a technology company, previously had backing from one of the Bill Gates funds. I think the technology solves a lot of problems, and it puts them well in line to be one of the most sustainable lithium producers in the world, which is going to be very important for accessing certain markets. The EU in particular are passing into law their sustainable battery legislation, which will require battery and EV manufacturers to trace the carbon footprint of their entire supply chain. The company have also just raised about 20 million Australian dollars, which will see them through to the construction phase, which is good for investors. It means that they shouldn't be diluting shareholding or trying to raise more capital from shareholders for at least a year or so. And finally, if you go and look at the numbers in the quarterly reports, December was the most recently published report. They expected earnings or EBITDA of 155 million US in the first year of operation or full operation, which was based on a wholesale price of 11,000 US dollars per ton and a purity of 99%. But during the pre-feasibility study, they actually demonstrated purity of 99.7%, which doesn't sound like much, but for battery manufacturers, it's pretty significant. So you would expect a higher selling price for a higher grade product. So I wouldn't be surprised if they actually exceed expectations there. So overall, does Lake Resources find a place within my portfolio? Well, although it's not an industry that I normally invest heavily in, I prefer to be a couple of steps further down the supply chain. It does tick a lot of boxes for me, this one. It's very disruptive, they use a comparatively clean technology, and I can't really think of many industries that are going to be getting more tailwind than this one at the moment. So for me, although it's speculative and it's high risk, I do think the benefits far outweigh the risk on this one. So what I'm going to be doing is allocating it a small place within the portfolio, probably a less than 1% weight initially, but I'll register to take part in the AGM, which takes place next month, and then we'll see what news we get from there. What are your thoughts on this one, guys? Is Lake Resources a good play? Does it make it into your portfolio? Let me know in the comments. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.